This podcast is brought to you by Contessa Digital.
So I have been very fortunate in that I have only had one ex-boyfriend that truly pissed me off. And I say this because when I was single, even when I was in relationships that weren't the healthiest, weren't the best relationships, when those relationships ended, one thing I always had going for me was that I was very good at not taking things personally, right? So I got into relationships for one reason or the other. They didn't work out. And I would be like, okay, well, yeah, that sucks, but it's all for the best. Let's move on. The one exception, was a guy that I was dating in my early 20s. And the thing is that this relationship had a long runway, right? So this had been someone that I had been friends with for years before he and I dated. And in those years of friendship, he kept asking me out and I kept saying no, right? I made it clear multiple times I was not interested in a romantic relationship with him. And after years went by, I had a couple of boyfriends that weren't so hot, you know what I mean? Like weren't so great to me. And, we were both older. We were both more mature. And I say more mature relatively because, we met as teenagers and we were in our 20s by the time we started dating. And, I thought, okay, let's see how this works. Let's give this a chance. And by the time I was willing to give this relationship a chance, the two of us no longer lived in the same town. So then that was a whole other thing. So now we were giving this a shot. We were dating each other. We were like making the time, to travel and see each other. Both of us were going back and forth, all of that good stuff. And then one day, all of a sudden, he's like, this doesn't work for me. I think I'm going to just see who else is out there and who else I can date. And I was so pissed because to me, this was someone that in general, I had not planned on dating anyways. It was not my typical type. And then I get involved with this person, make all this effort to be in a relationship, the whole long distance thing and traveling and stuff like that, for it to just not even end with like some big fight, not even end because there's some big fundamental difference between the two of us that makes a relationship not work, but just, that was cool. We tried it. Let's move on. And I'm telling you this story because of a video that I saw recently on Instagram. And the video was the 5 men that every woman has dated. And I want to talk about those men, what they all have in common, and how we avoid these situations that piss us off. So welcome to Confidently Cherished. If this is your first time listening, my name is Keshia Rice. I am a dating coach and hypnotherapist. I help women heal from their own unhealthy relationship patterns and also generational ancestral patterns and learn how to heal and put that towards being in relationships in which they are truly loved, cherished, and appreciated. So back to this video. In the video, I really wish I could give credit. I'm not sure because it was someone's repost. And they did not give credit. So if you know the woman who originally said these things, actually please tag me in the original video on Instagram or DM me and let me know who the woman is. But in the video, which it seems like she's been interviewed on a podcast or radio show or something similar, she talks about 5 men that every woman has dated. So one is the man who immediately off the bat tells you he's not ready for a commitment. He doesn't want commitment. And then there's the man who is very much not over his ex and really needs to stop playing in your face and needs to go ahead and find his ex and work out whatever that was. There's the man who has a baby on the way, but he's not in a relationship with the mother of that child, and he's not sure if he wants to work it out because he's not sure if he's the father. Number 4 is the man who is really clingy and does all these things to impress you and to make you feel like this is a great relationship. And then all of a sudden he goes ghost. And number 5 is the man that I was just telling you about, the man that you decide after a couple of bad relationships that maybe you should switch up your type. You should give this guy who's typically not your type a chance. And then once you give him a chance, he is no longer as interested. He no longer puts forth so much effort. So, my personal experience is I have dealt with 4 of the 5. Never dealt with the man with a baby on the way. But the others I have. And here's what all 5 of these men have in common, and that is a lack of availability. When you are out here looking for your purpose partner, the person that you are going to spend your life with, the first thing that you should look for is this man available to be in a relationship with you? So physically, is he single, right? Is there another person in the picture who thinks that he is in a relationship with them, right? You want to make sure that this person can date without cheating on you or cheating on another person. And I'm not talking about this whole, people talk about ethical non-monogamy and being polyamorous and all that. I am talking about monogamous relationships. Not judging people who are in polyamorous relationships, but that's not what I do. You should find another podcast, find another dating coach. So if, like me, you're interested in monogamous relationships, you want someone who also is interested in monogamous relationships and is not in one at the moment so that they can be in one possibly with you. You want someone who is also mentally available to be in a relationship. So in the case of the person who is not over their ex, or the case of a man who possibly has a child situation happening, those are men who are not mentally in a place to be in a relationship with you. Because obviously, if they are thinking about someone else all the time, they can't think about you all the time. And in the baby situation, if you have a man who is about to be a father, parenthood requires a lot of time, effort, and energy if someone is doing it right, male or female, mother or father. So if a man is about to have a child, or if he has a very young child, I often tell my clients, don't date a man who has a child who's less than, say, 2 years old, because if that is the case, they really need to be dedicating their time to that child, to learning how to be a father, to learning how to raise that particular child if they have more than one child. And their energy should be focused on that, not on trying to get with any woman at the moment. So these men mentally are not available to you. You want someone who is emotionally available to be in a relationship with you. So again, if they are not over their ex, they're not emotionally available to be in a relationship with you. If someone puts you on a pedestal, they are not ready to be in a relationship with you. And I want to be very clear on that, because oftentimes we hear things like a man should be more in love with the woman than she is with him. And you want someone who his actions show that he is fully committed to you. He's fully devoted to you. And I actually agree with both those things. I do. At the same time, there's balance, right? And honestly, I think that's the point of every episode that I do of this podcast. Everything I try to teach you is that there is balance in the way we approach everything. There's balance in our masculine and feminine energy. There's balance between setting boundaries and being, a witch with a capital B. There's boundaries in being kind and loving and being a pushover. Our entire lives are about finding this balance. So in the case of a man first dating you, then yes, he should put forth effort. He should be listening to you. He should be taking the time to learn about you. He should be asking you questions, paying on dates. After you've been dating for a while, then yes, I think gifts come into play. But if someone is, spending whole paychecks at the very beginning of a relationship, or if on the first date they're talking about marriage and kids and their future faking, those things are too overboard, and you are dealing with someone who is potentially clingy, someone who's potentially stalkerish, or someone who is a liar and who's doing all this future faking just so that they can let you down later. None of those things are good. Back to someone saying that they are not ready to be in a relationship. That comes from a place of they're not emotionally ready. They're not mentally ready because they're telling you they're not in a headspace for commitment. And they're also not physically ready. It's not a matter of they're in another relationship. So, they're available in that perspective. But if they're telling you they don't want commitment, then yeah, physically they're telling you they're not ready to be, or they're not in a place to be in a relationship. Or at the very least, if they're telling you this, they are not emotionally available, physically available, mentally available to be in a relationship with you. Maybe they would be for another woman, but not for you, which means that you should move on. So it is really important. And I'm going to keep this podcast episode short because I want you to take some time to think about this. I want you to take some time to journal this out and really work on your discernment here. I want you to consider, in the past, when you look at your previous relationships, what were some signs that someone was ready to be in a relationship, and what were the red flags that they were not ready to be in a relationship that you ignored, right? Or that maybe you didn't ignore them, maybe you just didn't know, right? You didn't know that that was a sign. But now that you're a little bit older, you're a little bit wiser, you see those and you're like, okay, yeah, if I saw a man do that now, I would definitely know that he's not available to be in a relationship. And what do you need in a relationship to feel like somebody's truly available for you in particular and what you have to offer? How can a man show you that he is serious about being in a relationship with you? And while you are doing all this journaling, and remember, you don't have to pen and paper journal. You could take the voice notes app on your phone and talk these things out. You could talk to yourself and not record it, like while you're in the car driving, but I really want you to somehow get this out of your head. So whether that's putting that down on pen and paper, or whether it is talking it out just to allow, those vocal cords to work and for you to get it out of your head that way. I want you to really consider these things. The other thing that you can journal and that I want you to journal is ask yourself this question. In what ways have I been unavailable to a great, healthy relationship in the past? Because once you answer that, and answer it truthfully, because this is not school homework, right? No one's going to see this. I'm not going to come through your phone or computer or however you're listening to this and demand to see your answers. But you will find that in some ways, you may be a mirror to what you're attracting. That the ways that you are unavailable for relationships or have been unavailable in the past are things that end up being reflected back to you and how people treat you. And you may find that even if you are in a relationship and that relationship is fairly good, that there's still some ways in which you could open up and be more available. I am married, and marriage for me has been my biggest test on vulnerability. I realized that I had a tendency before I got married to be kind of closed off sometimes. And it was something that I was very intentional about when I was dating my husband, and was even more intentional about after we got married. But even now, I find myself still working on that in little ways. And, as I discover new ways in which I can be open and feel healthy and safe in revealing things about myself, it helps me see how unavailable I was back when I was in my teens and early 20s, when I was in that relationship that I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, how even at the time I was so upset with him. Had he not done what he had done, that relationship still wouldn't have worked out, right? Because I wasn't really proof that I was not available to be in a healthy relationship was the fact that I was dating someone who I thought was beneath me the whole time, right? Just for the sake of saying that I gave him a chance. That is not available for a relationship, because when you are ready to be in a healthy relationship, the first step is knowing what it is that you want and need in a relationship and saying no to anything that doesn't look like that. And I didn't say no to anything that didn't look like that. I was in that particular relationship because I had been in a couple of crappy relationships, and I was settling for someone who was at the time treating me decently, but not somebody that I was excited about, not somebody that I was ever going to really love, right? So ask yourself, in what ways have you been unavailable to a healthy, loving relationship? And if you are in a relationship now, how can you improve and be more available? So I hope I have given you some things to think about. If so, make sure that you subscribe, that you leave a 5-star review and mention what you love about this podcast. Or, DM me on Instagram or screenshot this episode, post it in your stories, and tell other people to come listen. And I will talk to you soon. Love you so much. Bye. Hey there. So you made it all the way to the end of the episode, which means I have 2 things to say. 1, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. And 2, you like me. You really like me. So I would appreciate it if you would show that like by subscribing to this podcast so that more people can hear about it and enjoy it as much as you do. And if you want to know more about any of the links that I mentioned on this episode or any guests that I've had, be sure to go to KeshiaRice.com/links. That's KeshiaRice.com/links. I can't wait to talk to you again in the next episode. So see you then.